Nadine sat in the softly lit living room of her opulent home, hands trembling as she clutched the medical report. The grand chandelier overhead cast gilded reflections along the polished marble floors, giving the space an air of celebration, though she felt nothing but dread. Moments earlier, her doctor had delivered the devastating verdict. The chances of her conceiving a child were incredibly slim, perhaps impossible. She blinked back tears, trying to collect herself before Damien arrived. Her mind wandered to the day she and Damien had met, recalling how his charismatic smile and confident demeanor had enchanted her. Back then, she believed their union was not just an alliance of powerful families but also a bond of love. Yet recently, the pressure from his side of the family, especially his formidable mother, had grown so intense that Nadine couldn't help but feel like a broodmare under constant scrutiny. Every holiday gathering ended with whispering relatives glancing at her abdomen, judging her failure to produce the next heir of their wealthy empire. Nadine's heart pounded as she heard the door click open. Damien entered with a stiff posture and an unreadable expression. He glanced at the papers in her hand. "What's that?" he asked curtly, no warmth in his voice. She swallowed hard. "It's from the doctor," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "They ran all the tests. They found complications. Seems I may never be able to conceive." His silence struck her like a slap. She expected pity or at least an embrace, but instead, Damien's eyes flashed with anger. He snatched the report from her hands, flipping through the pages as though searching for a single line that might contradict what she just said. "This can't be true," he finally muttered, his jaw tight. "There must be another way. Another doctor." Tears slid down Nadine's cheeks. "I've tried everything," she said. "IVF, hormone therapy. They're not hopeful. I'm sorry. I wish." He cut her off. "You wish?" "It's not about wishing, Nadine. My family expects an heir. My mother, she won't tolerate excuses." She found herself rooted to the spot, her entire existence crashing beneath the weight of those callous words. She reached for his hand. "Damien, please. I need you on my side. We can keep trying. Adopt, maybe. We can." He ripped his hand away and threw the report on the coffee table. "We're done talking about this," he snapped. "I have a meeting in the morning. I'll think about it. But don't expect me to wait around forever." Nadine watched him walk away. She hugged herself, tears streaming down her cheeks, as the ominous sense of doom settled over her heart. Unbeknownst to her, this was only the beginning, the first crack in a wall about to crumble, leaving her world forever changed. The next day, Nadine awoke to the suffocating stillness of her bedroom, her mind racing with the echo of Damien's words from the night before. She dressed carefully, pressed black pants and a crisp white blouse, hoping that a dignified appearance might give her some confidence when facing the storm she knew was brewing. She was summoned to the family's ancestral estate, an imposing mansion perched on a sprawling property lined with manicured hedges and marble statues. Surrounded by portraits of ancestors whose eyes seemed to judge her, Nadine felt her stomach twist. Damien's mother, Eleanor Moretti, sat on a velvet chaise in the parlor with her spine rigid and her expression closed off. "Sit," Eleanor commanded. Damien stood near the fireplace, his gaze avoiding Nadine's. Immediately, the tension in the air told Nadine that this meeting was not going to end well. Taking a seat, Nadine cleared her throat, trying to steady her voice. "You wanted to see me?" Eleanor's lips curled into a semblance of a smile, but her eyes were cold. "I have already arranged for my son to meet Vanessa Harding. They'll be wed soon. We have business ties that must be sealed with marriage, someone who can give the Moretti family what we need." Shock rippled through Nadine. "But I'm Damien's wife," she stated, voice trembling. "You can't just—" Eleanor raised a hand, silencing her. "We can and we will. The doctor confirmed that you're worthless to us, Barren, if you prefer that word. Your position in this family was contingent upon providing an heir. You've failed. And we are not a family that tolerates failure." Tears stung Nadine's eyes. "I tried every treatment. I wanted nothing more than to have a child. This isn't my fault." Damien finally looked at her, but only a flash of guilt crossed his features. "It's over, Nadine." He tossed a manila envelope onto the marble coffee table. Inside were divorce papers. His voice was devoid of any sentiment. "Sign them." She couldn't breathe. Everything she feared was manifesting right there, in a single cruel gesture. Her vision blurred, and she blinked rapidly to clear her tears. When she didn't move quickly enough, two of Damien's personal guards stepped forward. At first, Nadine thought they intended to escort her to a guest room, at least give her a moment to compose herself. But their forceful grip on her arms clarified everything. This was no delicate eviction. They were dragging her out. "Stop!" she cried, struggling against them. "Damien, please." Damien said nothing, and his mother merely turned away, as if even witnessing Nadine's anguish was beneath her. The guard shoved Nadine out the massive front doors, her feet stumbling over the threshold. Her breath caught in her throat as she realized she was being thrown away from this family, from the life she had thought was hers. Falling to her knees on the gravel driveway, Nadine felt a searing pain in her palms and knees. She looked over her shoulder just in time to see the door slam shut, a final punctuation to the life she once knew. That afternoon, Nadine thought the worst was over. But the real horror began the next morning when she awakened in a modest hotel room she had hastily checked into the night before. Her phone buzzed incessantly with calls and notifications. Bleary-eyed, she picked it up, only to see that her face was plastered across every major gossip site. Barren wife dumped like trash. Heirless Nadine Moretti thrown out of the mansion. Hurt and humiliation mingled as she scrolled through article after article. The paparazzi had captured every agonizing second of the guards dragging her out. The media relished in her downfall. Each detail seemed crueler than the last. Nadine tried calling a few of her closest friends, desperately seeking even a glimmer of support. But every call went to voicemail. By mid-afternoon, rumors had spread that the Moretti family had cut her off completely. Nadine's friends in high society, people she had dined and vacationed with, now acted as if they had never known her. She was persona non grata, a social pariah who had nothing to offer them. Her final straw of hope was calling her own parents. Though their relationship had been strained, her parents felt overshadowed by the Moretti wealth. Nadine believed in the unconditional love of family. When her mother picked up, the first words were, "How could you bring us such shame? Everyone in the neighborhood is talking about how you failed to bear children. It's embarrassing." Nadine swallowed her tears. "Mom, I just need a place to stay for a while. I'll figure the rest out later. Please." Silence stretched across the line, thick and awkward. We're not in a position to help you right now," her mother finally replied. "There's too much gossip. We can't be involved." The line went dead. Nadine's phone slipped from her hand as she realized she was alone, truly alone. Stepping outside the hotel, she was met by flashing cameras and prying microphones. Each step she took felt like a walk of shame under the unrelenting gaze of the paparazzi. The questions were sharp and incessant. Were you cheating on Damien? How does it feel to be thrown out? Is it true you're infertile? She pushed through them, tears burning her eyes. She ducked into a nearby alley, sliding down against the cold brick wall. The world she had known for years disintegrated, and she had nowhere else to turn. At her lowest point, Nadine cradled her face in her hands, wishing she could vanish from existence. But somewhere beneath the humiliation, a tiny spark of determination ignited. She didn't know how she would survive, but she vowed that this would not be the end of her story. For hours, Nadine wandered the city streets, avoiding cameras and searching for any place that might offer her solace. The vibrant neon lights of upscale boutiques and bustling restaurants contrasted starkly with her empty pockets and shattered spirit. She clutched at the meager cash she had left, enough perhaps for a few nights of cheap lodging and some food, but certainly not enough to sustain her for long. As dusk fell, she noticed the imposing silhouette of an old brick building. A small sign read, "St. Maria's Orphanage." Curiosity and desperation led her to the gate, which stood slightly ajar. Children's laughter floated on the air, and the melodic sound offered an unexpected comfort. Venturing inside, she was greeted by the sight of a courtyard where a few children played, their clothes worn but their eyes bright with hope. A middle-aged woman with kind features approached. "Hello there," the woman said softly, concern evident in her gaze. "Are you all right? You look like you've had a tough day." Nadine attempted a smile, but tears began to blur her vision again. "I'm sorry," she managed to say. "I don't know where else to go." "Come inside," the woman responded gently, leading Nadine into a modest kitchen. The aroma of fresh bread and warm soup filled the air, immediately soothing her nerves. "I'm Sister Helena, and I help run this orphanage. You can stay here tonight, if you need shelter." Over a simple meal of bread and soup, Nadine found herself opening up, at least partially. She didn't share every humiliating detail, but her red-rimmed eyes and trembling hands told enough of her story. Sister Helena offered a comforting squeeze of Nadine's arm. "Life can be cruel," Sister Helena said, her voice gentle but firm. "But it can also be surprisingly kind. You are welcome to stay for as long as you need, though I'm afraid we don't have much in the way of comforts." Even a thin mattress on the orphanage's spare cot felt like a luxurious reprieve from the cold city streets. That night, Nadine lay awake, listening to the soft breathing of sleeping children in adjacent rooms. She felt oddly at peace among these little souls who had known unimaginable hardship yet still managed to find laughter in their days. A silent vow took shape in her mind. She refused to vanish into obscurity, no matter how low she had fallen. These children had nothing, yet they still believed in a better tomorrow. With that realization, Nadine promised herself she would not remain broken. She would reclaim her dignity and someday, her power. Days turned into weeks. Nadine assisted Sister Helena around the orphanage, cooking meals, cleaning rooms, and reading bedtime stories. Even in her heartbreak, she discovered new purpose in caring for children who had nobody else. In their innocent faces, she saw a reflection of what might have been, if only her body had cooperated, if only she had been able to give birth to the heir the Moretti family demanded. But as time passed, an unsettling sickness plagued her. She awoke each morning with intense nausea, sometimes racing to the small orphanage bathroom before she could begin her day. At first, she attributed it to stress, anxiety, maybe even a lingering flu. But Sister Helena, noticing Nadine's pallor and weight loss, insisted she visit a local clinic. Reluctantly, Nadine agreed, her heart pounding at the possibility of any dire medical diagnosis. Seated in the cramped waiting room, she felt tension coil in her stomach. When her name was called, she moved mechanically into the doctor's office. The doctor, a kind older man with spectacles perched on the tip of his nose, took her vital signs and noted her symptoms. After some tests, he politely asked her to wait. Nadine's head spun with worry, recalling the humiliating diagnosis that had shattered her marriage. Finally, the doctor returned, closing the door behind him. "Miss," he began carefully, scanning her chart. "You mentioned a history of being told you might never conceive?" Nadine swallowed hard and nodded. "That's correct," she whispered. "Why?" A small, kind smile formed on the doctor's lips. "Well, these lab results tell a different story. You're pregnant, with twins, no less. Congratulations." Her mind went blank. She stared at him, waiting for the punchline. When none came, her eyes welled with tears. Pregnant. She had been certain her body couldn't do this. And yet, here it was, a miracle. But how? She managed to choke out, her thoughts tumbling like dominoes. Sometimes, the doctor explained, the body needs time to respond to treatments, or earlier diagnoses can be inaccurate. In any case, you are definitely carrying twins. You'll need prenatal vitamins, regular checkups, especially given the stress you've been under. Nadine's world spun. The child she had yearned for was not only possible, it was already a reality, doubled. As she left the clinic, a flurry of emotions enveloped her. Joy, terror, excitement, confusion. The Moretti family had thrown her out because they believed she was barren. But she wasn't barren at all. After the initial surge of euphoria, a chilling thought set in. If Damien knew about these children, he would come for them. His ruthless family would never let their heirs remain outside the fold. Nadine had lived within that iron grip long enough to know that if she returned, she'd be forced to give them her babies, or be subjected to a life of subservience once more. She pressed a hand to her still flat abdomen, protective instincts flaring. One thing was certain. She had to hide, for the sake of her unborn children. A new path opened before her, and she was determined to walk it, no matter how perilous it might be. That night, Nadine told Sister Helena everything. The older woman listened without interruption, her eyes filled with compassion. When Nadine's narrative ended, Sister Helena gently placed a hand over hers. "You must do what's best for these children," Sister Helena said softly. "If staying here puts them at risk, then I'll help you leave." Over the next few days, Nadine and Sister Helena quietly arranged every detail of Nadine's disappearance. With the last of her personal jewelry, pieces she had managed to keep hidden from the Moretti estate, Nadine secured enough funds to purchase a one-way ticket overseas and a forged identification. Sister Helena contacted a distant acquaintance who specialized in discreet relocations, ensuring Nadine's tracks would be covered. The night before she left, Nadine stood before the orphanage's modest chapel, illuminated by a single flickering candle. Though she was never particularly religious, she found a sense of calm in the chapel's quiet hush. She placed a gentle hand over her abdomen, feeling an overwhelming sense of purpose. "This is our new beginning," she whispered to her unborn twins. "I promise I'll protect you." Early the next morning, she hugged Sister Helena goodbye, tears in both their eyes. Under the cover of dawn, Nadine slipped into a taxi. A half hour later, she boarded a plane with only a small suitcase containing a few personal belongings. Everything else, the identity she had once lived under, she left behind without looking back. Her new name was Nadine Stone, a woman with a future unbound by the shackles of the Moretti Empire. She sank into her airplane seat, exhaling a mixture of relief and trepidation. She was determined to carve a life that would shield her children from the cruelty she had endured. Yet even as she soared above the clouds, Nadine felt her pulse quicken at the thought of what lay ahead. She had some savings, a forged passport, and a steely resolve. But building a new life was no small endeavor, especially one requiring enough power to stay out of Damien's reach forever. Unaware that destiny had other plans, Nadine closed her eyes, whispering a silent prayer for the strength she would need. Though she had no idea what awaited her on foreign shores, she was certain of one thing. She would never let anyone, especially Damien, claim her children. Nadine landed in the bustling metropolis of Skyland City. Neon lights illuminated the towering skyscrapers, and the crowded streets were filled with a steady hum of life. Everything felt foreign, from the language on the signboards to the unfamiliar currency in her pocket. Still, she embraced the uncertainty, steeling herself for whatever came next. She found temporary lodging in a modest apartment building, using the last of her spare funds for the security deposit. She introduced herself as Nadine Stone, an identity that felt surreal but necessary. Each day, she focused on her pregnancy, determined to stay healthy. She cooked simple meals, took prenatal vitamins, and rested as much as her mind would allow. Her world took an unexpected turn when she met him, Alexander Gray, a mysterious billionaire rumored to be an eccentric genius. Nadine first encountered him at a local business center where she went to apply for a small administrative job. Her interviewer brushed her aside, seeing only an inexperienced foreigner with limited references. As she left the building in tears, a sleek car pulled up. Alexander stepped out, tall and imposing, with an air of quiet intensity. Dressed in a tailored suit, he radiated confidence. He overheard the confrontation and, for reasons Nadine couldn't initially fathom, seemed intrigued by her plight. "You're looking for work?" he asked, his voice resonant. She hesitated. "Yes, but it's proving more difficult than I hoped." He studied her for a moment. "If you're desperate, you'll likely end up in a position far beneath your potential," he said, his tone matter-of-fact. "Your eyes say you're capable of more." Nadine blinked, taken aback. Before she could respond, Alexander extracted a sleek business card from his coat. "Come to this address tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp. I might have an opportunity for you." His bluntness left her speechless. Despite her caution, something about his self-assured demeanor made her believe he could indeed help. The next morning, Nadine arrived at his offices, an entire skyscraper dedicated to Gray Enterprises. Alexander met her in a private meeting room, offering her tea and an intense gaze. "I see potential in people," he told her plainly. "And from the moment I saw you, I knew you weren't just another job seeker. There's a fire in you, a hunger to prove the world wrong. Am I correct?" Nadine swallowed. "Yes," she answered, her voice trembling with honesty. I need, to become stronger than the people who tried to break me." Alexander nodded as though her response was precisely what he expected. "Work for me. I'll teach you how to navigate power structures, how to invest, negotiate, and win. But be warned, I expect absolute loyalty. If you have the determination, I'll make you untouchable." The weight of his words settled over Nadine like a cloak. She thought of her twins growing inside her, of the life she needed to provide them. This, she realized, was not just a job offer. It was a deal with destiny, a chance to transform from a discarded wife into a formidable woman capable of securing her children's future. Fighting back tears of gratitude and apprehension, Nadine reached across the table and grasped Alexander's hand. "I accept," she whispered, sealing the pact that would change her life forever. Nadine arrived at Grey Enterprises every morning before dawn, immersing herself in a whirlwind of training that spanned finance, corporate strategy, international relations, and even public relations spin. Alexander introduced her to a network of mentors, seasoned executives, legal experts, and influential politicians, each offering a specific skill set. Over endless cups of coffee in posh boardrooms, Nadine devoured knowledge with the same ferocity she once reserved for survival. Her evenings were devoted to more hands-on practice. Alexander would analyze her interactions with clients, dissect her negotiation tactics, and critique her posture, speech, and even attire. On weekends, he took her to exclusive business clubs where deals were forged over brandy and cigars. Although visibly pregnant, Nadine's composure and sharp intellect quickly garnered respect from the older magnates who initially dismissed her as a mere assistant. Late at night, when she finally returned to her modest apartment, she would sink onto the sofa, exhausted but determined. She'd review stock market trends, memorizing them until her eyes burned. She studied corporate laws, devoured books on leadership, and taught herself multiple languages to handle Grey Enterprises' global reach. Her greatest motivator, though, was the knowledge that she wasn't just doing this for herself. She often spoke to her unborn twins, hands gently cradling her belly. "You won't ever feel small or powerless," she whispered. "I'll make sure of it." In a private moment, Alexander confided in her. "Power," he said, "is more than money. It's influence, the ability to shape outcomes. If you master that, you'll never be at someone's mercy again." Nadine latched onto his words like a lifeline. The seeds of a new identity took root in her mind. She was no longer Nadine, the discarded wife. She was Nadine Stone, a woman in pursuit of power, forging a path that would make her untouchable. When a small voice of doubt emerged, asking if she was merely swapping one form of control, Damien's family, for another, Alexander's mentorship, she pushed it aside. One step at a time, she told herself, she was becoming the kind of person who wouldn't be thrown away ever again. As Nadine's belly grew, so did her resolve. Months passed in a blur of high-stakes deals and shadowy negotiations. She kept her pregnancy discreet, wearing elegant coats and strategic outfits that masked her figure during official business hours. Only Alexander and a trusted personal assistant knew the truth. Eventually, the day arrived. Nadine went into labor on a stormy night, lightning illuminating the skyline of Skyland City. She was rushed to a private hospital wing, one that Alexander had arranged. No records would trace back to Nadine Moretti, only Nadine Stone. The labor was arduous, but as dawn broke, her cries of pain morphed into elation. Twin boys entered the world, their eyes squinting against the hospital lights. Nadine wept with a joy she had once believed she would never experience. She held both infants in her arms, their tiny hands curled around her fingers, and felt a swelling tide of love that transcended her prior anguish. Despite the moment's purity, she couldn't ignore a chilling undercurrent of fear. She was certain Damien would have used any means necessary to seize these heirs if he knew of their existence. So she planned meticulously. Birth certificates were filed under her new identity. The twins bore her last name, Stone, with no father listed. She requested that the doctors and nurses sign non-disclosure agreements provided by Alexander's legal team. Everything had to be perfect. She refused to risk the children's safety. Once discharged, Nadine's life became a delicate balancing act. She attended to the twins' every need, late-night feedings, lullabies, changing diapers, while also juggling the demands of her training under Alexander. She hired a discreet, live-in nanny who was fiercely loyal and well compensated to remain silent. Late one evening, Alexander stopped by her apartment, an unusual visit given his reclusive nature. He stood over the sleeping infants with a contemplative expression. "Your sons," he murmured, turning to Nadine. "They are your legacy, and one day they may inherit everything you build. Keep them safe." Her eyes shone with gratitude. "I will," she whispered, her voice laden with promise. Standing there in the quiet, with the hush of the city outside, Nadine felt the first stirrings of what her future could hold. She had a family of her own now, 2 miracles no one had believed in. The ghosts of her past still loomed, but for the first time, she felt an unbreakable sense of belonging. Whatever it took, she would ensure her children never knew the pain of being unwanted. Within 2 years, Nadine Stone evolved into a formidable figure in the corporate world. Stories circulated about an enigmatic businesswoman who seemed to have Alexander Gray's ear on every major deal. She rarely appeared at public events, preferring to orchestrate her moves from behind the scenes. But when she did show up, the room hummed with tension. Her strategic mind, coupled with her relentless drive, made her a corporate shark with a deceptively serene smile. Her twins, Daniel and Nicholas, remained her greatest joy. Whenever she was away from them for too long, she felt an ache, and she returned with small gifts, cuddling them until they fell asleep in her arms. Her nanny was the only other person who witnessed Nadine's tender side. To the outside world, Nadine Stone was a cold, calculating strategist, untouched by emotion. Under Alexander's mentorship, she learned that power meant anticipating moves before anyone else did. She masterminded acquisitions of smaller companies that held critical patents, ensuring their technology flowed into Gray enterprises and subsequently controlling entire market segments. She brokered deals with international investors that others deemed too risky, but her uncanny instincts often turned them into gold mines. She also refined her public persona. After a successful negotiation, the media occasionally caught her in the hallway, but she offered only clipped, polite responses. Her reputation was shrouded in enigma, which only fueled curiosity. Soon, tabloids began speculating about her origins. "Who is Nadine Stone?" they headlined. Some whispered she had come from old money overseas. Others guessed she was the daughter of a foreign tycoon. None guessed the truth, that she was once Nadine Moretti, cast out for being Barren. One evening, as she glanced at the skyline from her penthouse office, Alexander joined her. He offered her a flute of champagne. "You've outgrown my teachings," he remarked, half admiring, half teasing. "I knew you would. How does it feel to be unstoppable?" She took a slow sip, savoring the bubbles on her tongue, and smiled. "For the first time in my life, I feel free," she answered. But a flicker of caution passed through her eyes. "Yet, I can never be complacent." Alexander inclined his head. "No. Power demands vigilance. And from what I've observed, you have unfinished business with your past." Her grip tightened around the champagne flute. He was right. The Moretti family had a hold on her memories, on her sense of justice that still demanded retribution. She had kept tabs on them through the shadows, watching from afar. She knew that day would come when she would face them again. And this time, she vowed, she wouldn't be the one begging. Nadine began her strategic conquest by gathering insider knowledge of Damien's family business, an empire known as Moretti Corporation. Although still powerful, the company had encountered obstacles in the global market, especially where new technologies and investments were concerned. She learned that under Damien's leadership, they had lost a few key partnerships and were seeking new investors to remain competitive. Posing as a silent partner through multiple shell companies, Nadine started buying shares of Moretti Corporation. She instructed her legal team, trusted professionals within Gray Enterprises, to keep her identity veiled. Each move was calculated to avoid drawing attention. Share by share, chunk by chunk, she amassed enough influence to eventually have a say in board decisions. Simultaneously, Nadine built alliances with some of Moretti Corp's minority shareholders, individuals who were dissatisfied with Damien's management. She offered them lucrative deals, sweetening the pot with promise of future gains. Little by little, she wove her web of control. Alexander noticed her meticulous planning. "It's almost as though you're orchestrating an elegant dance," he observed during one late-night meeting. "But what's your endgame?" Nadine smiled cryptically. "When the time is right, I want to be in a position where the Morettis have no choice but to bow to me." Despite her outward confidence, each new step filled her with a mix of anticipation and unease. This was more than a financial takeover. It was personal. She relived those memories of being shoved onto gravel, locked out of her former home. She thought of the headlines that tarnished her name, the friends who had deserted her. Above all, she remembered the heartbreak of being labeled Barren. Now, as the mother of two healthy, thriving boys, Nadine refused to let the Morettis emerge unscathed. She wanted more than financial ruin for them. She wanted them to suffer the profound sense of loss they had inflicted upon her. Maybe that was cold, maybe it was ruthless, but she'd endured enough to know that some debts demanded a reckoning. At the end of another strategic briefing, Nadine closed her laptop and gazed at her reflection in the office window. She no longer saw the fragile woman whose worth was determined by her fertility. She saw an avenger, a protector, a mother. And she was ready to strike. The lavish annual charity ball hosted by Gray Enterprises was the talk of the season. Celebrities, politicians, and business moguls from around the globe gathered under one opulent roof to mingle, show off, and forge connections. Nadine typically avoided events that drew so much public scrutiny, but Alexander insisted she attend as a key representative of the company. She glided into the ballroom wearing a sleek evening gown, her hair pinned in an elegant chignon. Cameras flashed, capturing her entrance. Through whispers and turned heads, she caught snatches of conversation. "Is that Nadine Stone? She's even more stunning in person." She kept her composure, smiling politely as she navigated the crowd. Her heart nearly stopped when she recognized a profile across the room. Damien stood beside the ornate marble fountain, a glass of champagne in hand. His gaze traveled the crowd aimlessly until, suddenly, it landed on her. Their eyes locked. For a long moment, neither moved. Nadine's stomach churned, but her face remained unreadable. Damien furrowed his brow as if trying to recall a faint memory. He looked different, perhaps a bit more worn around the edges. Yet he still exuded that polished arrogance she remembered too well. Just then, a woman approached his side, hooking an arm through his. Nadine recognized her instantly. Vanessa, Damien's new wife. She looked immaculate in a gold-sequined gown that clung to her slender figure. Vanessa followed Damien's line of sight to Nadine, and for a brief second, confusion clouded her face. She likely saw only a beautiful, mysterious woman who commanded attention. Nadine turned away gracefully, stepping behind a group of dignitaries. She wasn't ready to engage yet. Retreating to a quieter corner, she steadied her breath. Damien hadn't recognized her outright. Her name, her appearance, even her manner of speaking had changed. But she sensed an electric tension. Some part of him must have felt that flicker of familiarity, an echo of the past. Alexander approached her, eyes keen. "You all right?" he asked in a low voice. She forced a cool smile. "Never better. Just saw a ghost, that's all." He nodded, understanding flickering in his gaze. "When the time is right, you'll decide how you want to handle this. For now, you're free to let him chase shadows." Nadine exhaled slowly, casting one more glance across the room. Damien was gone, lost in the crowd, just another figure in a swirl of evening attire. She realized her hand was trembling slightly around the stem of her wine glass. Tonight, she would maintain her distance. But soon, she knew, they would meet again, on her terms. In the weeks that followed the charity ball, Nadine immersed herself in quiet inquiries about the Moretti household. Through her network of private investigators, she uncovered gossip that circulated among the household staff. It turned out that Vanessa and Damien were experiencing marital tensions. Strained finances and the ongoing issue of producing an heir had put a crack in their union. During one particularly revealing meeting with her investigator, Nadine learned that Vanessa had also struggled to conceive. Rumors suggested she had undergone multiple costly treatments, all without success. Nadine felt a twisted pang of irony. The very family that threw her out for being barren now faced the same predicament with their new daughter-in-law. Beyond fertility concerns, however, there was something even darker. Whispers hinted that Vanessa had a sordid past involving multiple affairs. One rumor claimed that Vanessa had, in fact, aborted an earlier pregnancy without Damien's knowledge, fearing that the child might belong to another man. Nadine's investigator provided no solid proof, but the seeds of scandal were enough to pique Nadine's interest. Sitting in her private office, Nadine tapped her fingers on the mahogany desk. A single lamp illuminated the stack of files in front of her: photographs, financial ledgers, potential blackmail materials. She felt no sympathy for Vanessa, recalling vividly how that woman had willingly stepped into Nadine's place. If Vanessa's secrets threatened her standing in the Moretti family, it might just be the leverage Nadine needed. Still, she reminded herself that her vengeance was against Damien and the family that had discarded her. Vanessa was simply an accessory, though a useful one. Carefully, Nadine arranged the documents into a secure folder, locking it away in a drawer. Time would reveal how best to use them. That night, she sat with her twins in the plush nursery she had designed in her penthouse suite. Daniel and Nicholas were nearing 3 years old, full of curiosity and innocence. She whispered to them as they played with building blocks. "You have siblings out there," she thought, her heart clenching. "But you'll never know them, because the people who could have been your family are too cruel to deserve you." She kissed their foreheads goodnight, resolving to protect them from the toxicity she once endured. For now, her single-minded pursuit continued: building power, consolidating shares, and unveiling the hidden fractures in the Moretti empire. Nadine's legal counsel advised her that the moment to strike was drawing near. Between her strategic acquisition of Moretti Corp shares and the internal turmoil plaguing the Moretti family, the company was teetering on the brink of financial instability. As rumors spread that Moretti Corp was seeking a major investment to cushion its losses, Nadine readied her final chess move. She orchestrated a meeting through one of her proxy companies, Astra Holdings, presented as a potential lifeline investor. Moretti Corp executives, desperate to infuse fresh capital, eagerly jumped at the prospect. A date was set for negotiations in a high-end conference center. On the appointed day, Nadine watched from a separate chamber, her every move hidden by tinted glass and cleverly arranged digital feeds. Her proxy representatives handled the initial discussions. Damien arrived in a sleek navy suit, flanked by advisors and lawyers. He looked more tense than she remembered, lines of worry etched on his once arrogant face. Vanessa was there too, dressed elegantly but looking restless. She continually checked her phone as if expecting urgent news. Nadine smirked, recalling the covert files revealing Vanessa's questionable loyalties and hidden secrets. As the negotiations reached a critical juncture, Nadine made her entrance. Opening the door with a calm grace, she stepped into the boardroom. The Moretti team froze. Damien's eyes narrowed as he recognized her vaguely from the charity ball. Vanessa's lips parted in confusion. One of Nadine's proxy executives introduced her. "This is Nadine Stone, the principal partner behind Astra Holdings. She'll be overseeing the final terms of the investment." For a moment, the air crackled with tension. Damien stared at her, suspicion flickering across his features. "Have we met before?" he finally asked. Nadine offered a serene smile, neither confirming nor denying. "I've met many people, Mr. Moretti. Regardless, I look forward to forging a mutually beneficial agreement." The board members of Moretti Corp breathed a collective sigh of relief, oblivious to the undercurrent swirling between Nadine and Damien. They saw her as their saving grace, a wealthy investor whose capital could stabilize their teetering ship. For Damien, though, alarm bells were ringing. Something about her voice, her poise, stirred old, buried memories of a woman he had once known. Keeping her mask firmly in place, Nadine led the discussions. She feigned interest in their proposals, making suggestions that subtly deepened Moretti Corp's dependency on Astra Holdings. By the end of the day, the broad outline was set. Astra Holdings would provide a significant cash injection in exchange for increased equity and partial control over the company's strategic direction. "We'll finalize the details in the coming weeks," Nadine said smoothly, gathering her documents. "We want Moretti Corp to flourish." Before he could question her further, Nadine exited the room. Behind her, the Moretti executives exchanged relieved glances, while Damien watched her retreating form with uneasy curiosity. Step by step, he was being lured into her carefully laid trap, and he had no idea how tightly she was about to close the snare. A few weeks later, a grand charity gala was held at Skyland City's majestic Imperial Hall. Attendees were the who's who of business, politics, and entertainment. Ostensibly, the event was for raising funds for a children's education initiative, but in reality, it was a high-stakes playground where alliances were forged and power was displayed. Nadine arrived with Daniel and Nicholas in tow, each little boy dressed in a miniature tuxedo that mirrored her sophisticated attire. She had decided that this was the moment to unveil her personal life, partially. Rumors had long circulated about her marital status and possible children, but she had never confirmed anything. Tonight, she would let the world see her as both a successful mogul and a devoted mother. From across the hall, Damien and Vanessa entered, drawing a cluster of cameras. Damien looked sharp, though subdued. Vanessa sparkled in a flowing gown, her arm curled around Damien's, though an unsettling strain clung to her smile. Their eyes inevitably scanned the crowd, landing on Nadine, who stood elegantly with her sons. Damien's gaze latched onto the twins. There was something uncannily familiar about them, especially their eyes, which held a hue reminiscent of his own. He couldn't shake the uneasy sense that he'd seen these features before. His heart pounded in his chest as a wave of confusion assaulted him. Vanessa also stared, her eyebrows arching. She whispered something to Damien, who nodded tersely. Together, they approached Nadine. "Ms. Stone," Damien began, forcing a courteous tone. "It's a surprise to see you here with your children?" Nadine inclined her head in a measured greeting, resting a protective hand on each twin's shoulder. They were invited as well. After all, this gala benefits children's education. I want them to understand the value of giving back. Daniel and Nicholas blinked wide-eyed at Damien and Vanessa, polite but disinterested in the tension swirling around them. Damien's focus never left the twins. "They look around 3 or 4 years old," he ventured hesitantly. 3, Nadine confirmed, her voice neutral. Vanessa made an awkward attempt at a smile. "Oh, they're adorable. May I ask who their father is?" Nadine's lips curved in the faintest smirk. "Their father is not in our lives." A hush descended, the loaded statement stirring a complex mix of emotions in Damien's eyes. Before he could press further, Nadine's phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen and then looked back at them. "If you'll excuse us." She guided her sons toward a group of executives, leaving Damien and Vanessa lingering in her wake. Damien stared after the trio, heart hammering in his chest. Some instinct told him that these children were not just a random detail in Nadine Stone's polished life. With each passing second, the nagging possibility gained traction in his mind. Could they be mine? In the days after the gala, Damien's suspicions about Nadine Stone's twins intensified. He grew restless, consumed by an unshakable feeling that he was staring at a piece of his past. Despite the chaos in his personal and professional life, he fixated on one objective: discovering the truth. Seizing a rare moment when Nadine was abroad on business, he turned to a private investigator of his own. With a hefty payout, he secured covert surveillance on the twins. Using stray items, a disposable cup Daniel drank from at a public cafe, a tissue Nicholas used to wipe his nose, Damien's investigator obtained DNA samples. Damien waited in a swirl of anxiety and desperation, checking his phone incessantly for updates. When the results finally arrived, he locked himself in his study at home, ignoring Vanessa's concerned knocks. Opening the confidential envelope, he read the lines that would turn his world upside down. Probability of paternity: 99.9%. His hands shook, breath stuttering as he relived a torrent of memories. Nadine's tearful pleas when she was declared barren, the humiliation of throwing her out, and that final image of her being dragged away from the Moretti estate. She wasn't barren after all. She had given birth to twins, his children. A tumult of emotions slammed into him: regret, anger, disbelief, and a twisted strand of hope. As the reality set in, he realized the monstrous depth of his mistake. He had cast out the very woman who could give him the heir his family so desperately sought. That night, he confronted Vanessa in their bedroom. "Did you know?" he demanded, brandishing the DNA results. Vanessa blanched. "Know what?" "That Nadine is not Barren. She has twins, my twins." Vanessa's eyes widened with genuine shock. She stammered in confusion, unsure whether to feign ignorance or express dismay. "But she was declared infertile, wasn't she?" Damien's gaze bored into her. "So we believed. But it was a lie, someone's lie. Or a misdiagnosis." He sank onto the edge of the bed, hands clenched. "All this time, we could have had an heir, yet I threw her away like garbage." For the first time in years, Damien felt truly powerless. His mother's condemnation, the divorce papers, the public spectacle, it all came rushing back. And in that moment, he understood just how profoundly he had wronged Nadine. The question now was what he could possibly do to rectify such a catastrophic betrayal, and how he would face a woman whose life he had effectively destroyed. The Moretti mansion felt suffocating to Damien. Artwork adorned the walls, each piece worth a fortune, but he saw only the emptiness of a legacy that hinged on his ability to produce the next heir. Now he knew there were two heirs, living, breathing children who shared his blood. Children he had abandoned unwittingly. The guilt gnawed at him, haunting his every thought. He summoned a family council, including his mother Eleanor Moretti. Vanessa was notably absent, having retreated to her parents' home amid the swirling turmoil. Tense and apprehensive, Damien cleared his throat and faced Eleanor. "Mother," he began formally, "I have reason to believe Nadine was never barren. She has twins, my children." Eleanor's eyes flashed with a mixture of disbelief and outrage. "That's absurd." The doctor confirmed. "I have proof," Damien interrupted, slapping the DNA report onto the table. "All these years, we blamed her for being unable to conceive, but we were wrong. Now, she has what our family needs most: heirs." Eleanor's face paled. She realized the magnitude of this revelation, that everything they had done, including divorcing Nadine and bringing Vanessa into the family, was built on a false premise. "Where are these children?" she demanded. Damien hesitated. "They live with Nadine. She's grown powerful, Mother. She doesn't need us." Eleanor's nostrils flared with indignation. "Don't be naive. She may not need us, but we need her, and those twins. We can't let the Moretti line end here. If she's wealthy, we can find a way to bring her back into the fold. Offer her something she wants. We have resources." Damien's jaw tightened, remembering the sheer coldness with which he had cast Nadine aside. "I doubt she'll come willingly. We wronged her, Mother. More than you realize." Eleanor rose from her seat, her voice hardened by generations of entitlement. "Then we make her come to us. One way or another. She's carrying our blood, and I will not allow the Moretti name to be diminished. Speak to her. Do whatever it takes to secure those heirs." Damien left the meeting feeling a strange mix of resolution and dread. He thought of Nadine's regal bearing in that boardroom, how she had seemed so distant and self-assured. Was it possible to coax her back into the family she despised? Could the scars of betrayal ever heal? One thing was clear: the Morettis were now desperate. And desperation, Damien knew, could make them do dangerous things. At the Moretti estate, Vanessa paced the marble foyer, her nerves frayed. News had reached her that Nadine was the mother of Damien's children, a twist she had never anticipated. Suddenly, the precariousness of her own position became starkly apparent. Eleanor Moretti had already begun to treat her coldly, hinting that the family needed a real mother for their heirs. Unable to bear the tension, Vanessa decided to launch a preemptive strike. She set up a meeting with a tabloid journalist she had connections with, hoping to concoct a scandal that might undermine Nadine's reputation. If she could paint Nadine as a scheming gold digger who trapped Damien, maybe the Morettis would cling to Vanessa as their saving grace. However, Vanessa vastly underestimated Nadine's preparedness. Nadine's private investigator intercepted whispers of the plan, catching wind of Vanessa's secret meeting. With the documented evidence of Vanessa's unsavory past, her affairs, her possible abortion, Nadine orchestrated her own counterplot. The day before Vanessa's story was set to break, a new headline overtook the tabloids: "Affairs and Lies, the shocking double life of Vanessa Moretti." Explicit photographs surfaced, linking Vanessa to scandalous relationships that spanned years. Financial records were leaked, exposing hush money she had paid to an ex-lover. In an instant, the Moretti name was dragged through the mud, and Vanessa stood at the epicenter of the storm. When Vanessa saw the headlines, she went pale as a ghost. She locked herself in her bedroom, ignoring Damien's pleas. She knew that once Eleanor Moretti got wind of this fiasco, there would be hell to pay. Indeed, that very evening, Eleanor confronted Vanessa in a fit of rage. "You dare sully our name," she spat, brandishing the tabloid. "We brought you into this family to produce an heir, and you can't even do that. Now you reward our generosity with scandal." Vanessa tried to stammer a defense, but Eleanor's fury was implacable. "We are done covering for you. The only thing that mattered was your ability to conceive. And if you can't give us that, you are worthless." Tears streaked Vanessa's cheeks. She realized too late that Nadine had outmaneuvered her. In a single strategic move, Nadine had flipped the script, ensuring that Vanessa's downfall began precisely when Vanessa attempted to strike first. Nadine was in her penthouse office, reviewing financial reports, when her secretary buzzed in. "Ms. Stone," came the tentative voice, "there's a man here to see you." "He doesn't have an appointment." Nadine looked at the security feed on her computer. She nearly dropped her pen. Standing in the lobby, looking disheveled and anxious, was Damien. Her heart thundered, but she maintained composure. "Send him up," she replied coolly. She wanted to see what desperation drove him to do. A few minutes later, Damien entered her private office, glancing around at the sleek furnishings and panoramic city views. He appeared smaller somehow, weighed down by an invisible burden. Nadine stood from behind her desk, her spine straight, exuding the quiet power she had cultivated. "Ms. Stone," Damien began, his voice cracking. "May I sit?" She inclined her head. "Please." She folded her hands, letting silence pool between them. Damien took a deep breath, visibly gathering courage. "I'm sure you know by now," he said carefully, "that the twins Daniel and Nicholas are my children." Nadine raised an eyebrow. "Are they?" His face twisted with guilt. "I did a DNA test. It came back conclusive. They're mine. Which makes me realize how catastrophically we wronged you. I came here to say I'm sorry." She felt her heart clench at his remorse, but she forced her expression to remain impassive. "You're sorry? For what exactly? Throwing me out because you believed I was barren? Publicly humiliating me? Or waiting until you needed heirs to finally come find me?" Damien bowed his head. "All of it. I acted like a monster. I listened to my family, but I was just as culpable. I regret every part of it." A flicker of anger danced in Nadine's eyes. She rose from her seat, circling her desk to stand before him. "So you think an apology will fix everything?" He swallowed. "I want to do right by you. And by them. We can be a family again if—" She let out a sharp laugh. "A family? You dare use that word now? After discarding me when I needed support most?" His shoulders sagged. "I know it's too late to undo the past. But I'm begging you to consider returning. The Morettis need an heir, and you already have the rightful ones. Let's raise them together." Nadine's expression hardened. She could still recall every moment of pain, the humiliations, the lonely nights. "I didn't raise them alone so you could swoop in at your convenience. You lost that right the day you threw me out." She gestured toward the door. "Leave. And don't come back unless you accept my terms. I owe you nothing, and my children are mine alone. If you try to force my hand, you will regret it." Damien stared at her, speechless, before nodding in defeat. He turned and walked out, shoulders slumped, the door quietly clicking shut behind him. Nadine exhaled, her heart pounding. She braced herself against the desk, swallowing the tumult of emotions swirling within. For so long, she had craved an apology, an acknowledgement of her suffering. But now that it was offered, she found no solace in it, only a reminder of just how much she'd lost and fought for. In the aftermath of Damien's visit, Nadine found herself at an emotional crossroads. She had once pined for his approval, prayed for him to stand by her side. Now, she saw clearly that her worth was not tied to any man's validation. She was a mother, a business titan, a woman who had overcome unspeakable betrayal. The apology had come too late. That evening, Nadine cleared her schedule and spent time at home with Daniel and Nicholas. They built pillow forts in the living room, laughing as they popped bubble wrap from a recent delivery. The twins had no idea of the drama swirling around them, nor the identity of the man who had entered their mother's office that morning. When she tucked them into bed, they each insisted on a bedtime story. Nadine obliged, reading from a worn fairy tale book about a princess who was cast out of her kingdom but returned stronger than ever. The metaphor was not lost on her. After they fell asleep, Nadine sat on the sofa, her thoughts drifting to the crossroads she now faced. She had to make a decision about whether to let Damien or the Moretti family into her sons' lives. Blood ties aside, she could not ignore the heartbreak they had caused her. But was she willing to sever her children's connection to their paternal heritage permanently? She weighed the options. If she allowed Damien back in, the Morettis might try to control her, or worse, take her children away. If she continued to reject them outright, she risked an ongoing feud that could escalate. In the end, the choice became clear in her mind. She would protect her children at all costs, even if it meant denying Damien any role in their lives. She had raised them independently for years. They lacked for nothing. The Morettis entitlement did not grant them a free pass to disrupt the peace she had built. Early the next morning, Nadine drafted a formal notice through her legal team. A cease and desist order against any attempt by Moretti Corp or any members of the family to contact her or her sons. She had no intention of letting them claim the boys. They had lost that right long ago. With the letter sealed and sent, Nadine felt a sense of finality. She was choosing herself and her children over any lingering sentiment. The princess in her story had returned stronger, and she would not surrender her crown for a family that never valued her in the first place. Damien's mother, Eleanor Moretti, responded swiftly to Nadine's legal warning. Furious at being legally shut out, she confronted Vanessa in a fit of rage. "You can't give us children, and now you've disgraced us in the tabloids," she screamed, her usually composed facade cracking like ice. "Damien's real children are out there, and we're completely powerless. All because of your failures." Vanessa stood rigid, trying to muster a defense, but her words died in her throat as Eleanor's venom lashed out again. "It's over, Vanessa. Pack your things. You're no longer welcome in this house." Vanessa's eyes widened, tears threatening to spill. She had clung to the Moretti name for security and status, and now it was slipping through her fingers. She realized too late that the family's loyalty was fickle, hinging solely on the potential for an heir. That evening, Damien looked on with weary resignation as Vanessa stormed out, suitcases in hand. He didn't lift a finger to stop her. In truth, he was too consumed by the realization that his family's entire framework, marriages, alliances, business deals, was built on cold, transactional logic. If one couldn't deliver what the family demanded, they were discarded. Just as Nadine had been. Eleanor turned on her son next, her voice trembling with fury. "Fix this," she ordered. "I don't care what it takes. We need the twins. They are ours by blood." Damien's chest felt hollow. He recalled the heartbreak in Nadine's eyes. He knew there was no easy way back. Still, the Moretti legacy loomed over him like a dark cloud. He had been raised to believe the family name was paramount, that continuing the bloodline justified any action. Torn by guilt, he quietly replied, "I'll try again. But she won't budge, Mother. We may have to face the truth that we lost her for good." Eleanor slammed a fist on a side table, the sound echoing through the hall. "She doesn't get to keep my grandchildren from me. If gentle persuasion won't work, we'll resort to other means." Damien closed his eyes, a pang of dread slicing through him. He realized that if his mother was willing to scheme, so was Nadine. And between them, the stage was set for a final confrontation, one that could lay waste to everything he knew. Unbeknownst to the Morettis, Nadine was prepared for every possible counterattack. She had built her empire with the sole objective of outmaneuvering them if they ever came for her children. Now, with their desperation at fever pitch, she sensed the endgame was near. She orchestrated a major financial coup. Using her proxy companies, she executed a stock buyout that granted her a controlling interest in Moretti Corporation. In a single stroke, she effectively owned the majority share, ousting key family members from their positions on the board. The scandal rocked the financial world. How had this mysterious Nadine Stone seized one of the oldest, most prestigious family companies? The final blow came in the form of a board meeting that Nadine convened in Moretti Corp's grand headquarters. She arrived flanked by a team of top-tier lawyers and advisors. Some board members, previously loyal to the Morettis, now scrambled to curry favor with the new majority shareholder. Damien appeared in the conference room, pale with shock. His mother, Eleanor, stood at his side, furious but outwardly composed. They watched as Nadine took the head seat at the long oak table, a place once reserved for the Moretti patriarch. Clearing her throat, Nadine opened the meeting with a crisp statement. "I've recently acquired controlling shares of Moretti Corporation effective immediately. I'll be instituting sweeping changes in leadership and strategy. For too long, this company has suffered from mismanagement." She flicked her gaze pointedly at Damien. Eleanor erupted. "This is still the Moretti family's business. You can't just waltz in and take over." Nadine offered a sardonic smile. "I can, and I have. Isn't that how you taught Damien? To seize what you want without regard for others." Damien's face twisted with guilt, but he said nothing. He knew she had the legal right to be here. Nadine's expression hardened. "Consider this my official announcement. The Moretti Empire is under new ownership. And to any members of the Moretti family who wish to remain in the company, you will serve under my terms." A hush fell. It was a victory as chilling as it was complete. Nadine had not only protected herself and her children, she had claimed the very throne that once cast her out. Indeed, revenge was best served cold, and the Morettis were left reeling, realizing too late that their former scapegoat had become their ruler. As Nadine's ascension made headlines, Vanessa found herself in a media frenzy. Having already been exposed for her affairs and lies, she now became an object of ridicule. The scandal made her persona non grata in high society. Friend after friend abandoned her, invitations were rescinded, and her social media was inundated with vitriol. Desperate to salvage her reputation, Vanessa attempted to appear on a popular talk show, hoping to paint herself as a victim of circumstance. She planned to blame the Moretti family for pressuring her, claiming ignorance about Nadine's situation. But Nadine, anticipating every angle, ensured that the show's producers had full access to Vanessa's documented scandals. Moments before the live broadcast, the producers cornered Vanessa, brandishing incriminating evidence of her past manipulations. Realizing that any attempt at defending herself would only trigger further public outcry, Vanessa fled the studio in tears. The tabloids devoured the spectacle with glee. Photos circulated of Vanessa stumbling in her high heels, running away from the paparazzi like a frightened deer. Memes and social media posts skewered her hypocrisy. Vanessa wanted the throne but got exiled instead. Meanwhile, Nadine's own press statements were minimal, simply reiterating her new role in Moretti Corporation. She let Vanessa's self-destruction speak for itself. Vanessa found no sympathy from the Morettis, who distanced themselves from her to salvage what little dignity they had left. In one final blow, the Hardings, Vanessa's own family, announced that they would not be supporting her financially, citing moral disagreements. Homeless and shunned, Vanessa disappeared from the public eye. Nadine watched from a distance, recalling her own days of being thrown away. But she felt no pity now. Vanessa had willingly participated in her downfall. Now, karma had come full circle, delivering a public humiliation so absolute that Vanessa would never regain her former status. Several weeks after Nadine's takeover of Moretti Corp., she found herself at the center of a grand press conference. Media outlets from around the country gathered in a sprawling ballroom, waiting for her statement. The rumors swirling ranged from potential rebranding of Moretti Corp. To speculation about her personal ties to the family. Nadine stepped onto the stage with poise, her dark hair swept into a neat bun, dressed in a tailored suit that exuded confidence. Cameras flashed as she approached the podium. She thanked the crowd for coming and began outlining her vision for the company, emphasizing transparency, technological innovation, and ethical business practices. However, the press was hungry for more salacious details. One reporter from a major network stood up and asked directly, "Ms. Stone, there are rumors that you share a personal history with Damian Moretti. Can you confirm or deny?" Nadine's gaze flickered to where Damian stood off to the side, overshadowed by security. She could sense the tension in his posture, the silent plea in his eyes. For a moment, she allowed the hush to settle in the room. Then she spoke, her voice steady but resonant with conviction. "Yes, Damian Moretti and I share a history," she stated. "But that history does not change the fact that I am now the majority shareholder and CEO of this corporation. I have a responsibility to my employees and my partners to steer this company toward success. Personal matters will not interfere with that." Another reporter jumped in. "What about the rumors regarding your children? Are they truly the heirs of Damian Moretti?" Nadine offered a thin smile. "My children are my own. Their paternity is not a matter for public debate. Suffice it to say, we are a happy family, without any need for outside influence." A ripple of stunned silence passed through the crowd. Reporters scribbled furiously. The statement was as clear a rejection of Damian's paternal claim as one could make. Damian, standing in the wings, felt his chest tighten. He realized that Nadine had no interest in reuniting. She was severing any remaining thread tying them together. Across the stage, Eleanor Moretti stood in stony silence, outmaneuvered and powerless. Concluding her remarks, Nadine stepped away from the podium. She walked with purposeful strides out of the ballroom, head held high. Daniel and Nicholas were waiting for her in a private area, excitedly playing with toys. She scooped them into her arms, ignoring the fervor still brewing behind her. This was her victory, stepping away from a legacy that once destroyed her and forging her own destiny, unshackled and triumphant. Years slipped by. Nadine's empire thrived, expanding beyond the foundations of Gray Enterprises and the former Moretti Corporation. She became a household name, admired for her philanthropic efforts and revered for her business acumen. Daniel and Nicholas grew into bright, compassionate boys, under the watchful care of a mother determined to shield them from the cynicism of her past. Meanwhile, Damian's life took a stark downward turn. Stripped of meaningful authority at the family business, he floated through minor ventures that never amounted to much. He watched from the sidelines as Nadine's star ascended, her achievements chronicled in magazines and business journals. The final blow came when his mother, Eleanor, passed away quietly, leaving him with little more than memories of an empire that was no longer his. One crisp autumn afternoon, Damian found himself standing outside the gates of a prestigious private school. He lingered near a sleek car, hoping for a glimpse of the sons he had never truly known. Before long, he saw them, Daniel and Nicholas, now 10 years old, chatting animatedly with their friends as they walked to a waiting limousine. They looked so much like him at that age, features that pricked his heart with longing and regret. From a distance, he also spotted Nadine stepping out of the limousine, dressed in understated elegance. She greeted her sons with warm hugs, listening attentively as they recounted their day. Damian stayed hidden, watching this tender moment through the iron bars of the school's fence. A pang of sorrow welled up inside him, a reminder of what he had lost through arrogance and impulsive cruelty. Nadine sensed his presence. For a fleeting second, she locked eyes with him. In that glance, he saw no hate, only a distant sadness. She turned away, ushering the boys into the car. The gates closed, and Damian remained outside, a ghost from the past, forever separated from the family he could have had. As the limousine disappeared down the leafy suburban street, the final shot was clear. Nadine's life was filled with purpose, love, and power. Damian, once the heir to an empire, was now the one left behind, broken, regretful, and forever haunted by the heirs he had cast away. In the end, Nadine had found her triumph, and Damien was left to bear the weight of his own ruin. The circle was complete, and justice, in its own poetic form, had been served. "I'm glad you made it to the end,"